Hey everyone, it's Dominick from the Comic Book Report YouTube channel doing another guest review here for Organic Price Books. And today we're going to do a quick overview for a recently released omnibus from Marvel Comics. Of course, I'm talking about the Adam Warlock Omnibus. This book has a ton of creators, but some of the issues in this volume were written by Stan Lee, Roy Thomas, and Jim Starlin. Illustrated, of course, by many as well, but some notables include Jack Kirby, Gil Kane, and Jim Starlin. The issues in this volume were published predominantly during the 1970s, but there are a few issues that go all the way back to 1967. The volume itself collects the Fantastic Four issues 66 and 67, the Mighty Thor issues 165 and 166, Marvel Premiere issues 1 and 2, Warlock issues 1 through 15, Strange Tales issues 178 through 181, The Incredible Hulk issues 176 through 178, and the annual number 6, Marvel Team Up issue 55, the Avengers annual number 7, and Marvel 2-in-1 issues 61 through 63, and annual issue 2. This oversized omnibus collection has glossy print paper stock and a sewn binding, which I will show you momentarily. But first I want to show more of the exteriors. The spine is that new format for a lot of the new printings of Silver and Bronze Age books. We have the little picture window. I will say both the picture on the spine and the cover are part of the direct market or DM variant cover edition of this omnibus, which is the one I have here. I will throw up a quick image of the standard edition cover as well so you can compare which edition you'd prefer. But at any rate, a really well constructed book here. I do want to go ahead and do one more look at that dust jacket, show you the interior flaps, as well as the under the dust jacket print for this hardback omnibus edition. I will say this is a Bronze Age collection, and like those and the Silver Age, there isn't too much excitement going on under the hood as far as the under the dust jacket art print. I know a lot of modern omnibuses have like really ornate wraparound covers, is not too uncommon, but this one's pretty straightforward. You know, it's just going to say Warlock on the front and have a little gem on the back, which you'll see here in a moment. Now let's go ahead and take a look at that hardback book. You'll see what I'm talking about there. I do like that they reprint kind of the spine detail work. I believe the image we see in the picture window on the actual hardback is the one that's reflected in the standard size hardcover's spine. So that's really cool that you kind of get both spines if you get this DM cover. At any rate, like I said, a really nice looking book. No real complaints. Pretty standard stuff. A really great classic collection here. And now before we jump into the collection itself, just a quick look at the binding I mentioned earlier. It is a nice sewn binding. I didn't notice too much gutter loss. Luckily Bronze Age, we're not getting too experimental with some of the panel layouts, so there is a bit of white space in a lot of cases in this book, but you can be a judge for yourself as far as the gutter loss. Overall, I have zero complaints with this binding. Okay, and now let's transition into the book itself. You'll find that the first few pages are very common for a lot of these omnis. We got some great title pages, publication information, and a table of contents before we have a bit of an intro, kind of paragraph, a little blurb, and then we dive right into the issues. And as we make our way in, I will say I did not know a ton about Adam Warlock before reading this omnibus. It was one of the things I was most looking forward to when I found out I'd have an opportunity to read it. I'd seen him pop up in Infinity Gauntlet and some of the Infinity series. I've seen him pop up in the Starlin Silver Surfer run, and I really liked him as this kind of cool Marvel cosmic character from like the 70s, 80s, things like that, but I hadn't read a ton of his actual issues, and so this was a really unique opportunity. I've become a really big Jim Starlin fan, particularly his run on Silver Surfer. I have absolutely loved. And frankly, with the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 movie coming out for the MCU, which will feature Adam Warlock, I believe, I knew that this was such a great time to dive into the character. So this omnibus is really cool. It starts with his first appearances and then kind of going through his initial run. Like I mentioned earlier, most of his run was published throughout the 1970s, with a few dipping into the 60s, the end of the Silver Age there. We have those issues included from Fantastic Four and the Mighty Thor, which was really fun. These are his early origins, first appearances, back when he was first called him, before he even had the name Adam Warlock. Those issues of both Fantastic Four and The Mighty Thor were written by Stan Lee and illustrated by Jack Kirby, so we have some quintessential classic comic book Silver Age style in this book, which is always a delight to see for me. After that, we jump forward towards his more solo titles between the Marvel premiere and the actual Warlock run, and really liked this stuff. This transitioned over to Roy Thomas and some others, and basically once we get to that point, it really becomes Adam Warlock that is a bit more recognizable. And then about halfway into it, we actually transition over into Jim Starlin's era, which really revamps the character and is really the one I know from reading the Silver Surfer stuff and the Infinity Gauntlet and things like that. So it's really interesting with this one omnibus. We almost have, I would say, like 3 separate like relaunches for this character. We have his initial origins in Fantastic Four. We have the early stuff under Roy Thomas, and then we have the Jim Starlin era. So we get to see a lot of evolution of this character, even within this one volume, and that's a lot of fun. In the beginning, Warlock is sort of conceived as this perfectly created human that's created by these super scientists on Earth. He emerges from a kind of cocoon and has all of these incredible powers. Eventually, he makes his way under the Roy Thomas, like kind of solo Warlock stuff, to finding the High Evolutionary, who's floating in this space station and creating something that's going to be known as Counter-Earth, which is an identical copy to the Earth, just about, that's placed on the far side of the sun where the Earth will never see it, or something like that. He basically tries to create a perfect world, perfect society, untainted by evil, but he drifts asleep after creating it, and evil enters his Counter-Earth, and instead of destroying the planet, Warlock intervenes and said he will eliminate the presence of evil on that world, thus saving the planet. There is a pretty clear comparison to like a Jesus figure, savior figure throughout most of this run. The first, half of the book after that early Silver Age stuff from Stan and Jack really features his adventures and exploits on this Counter-Earth, where he's trying to rid the Counter-Earth of evil, save the day, and he's kind of in and out of contact with the High Evolutionary. And it's an interesting run. Like I said, there's some very overt comparisons and allusions and themes and things that are similar to some biblical works. So that's really the first half of the omnibus. I think that overall, I loved the Silver Age issues. They were a ton of fun. The 70s early stuff with Roy Thomas, again, the issues were fine overall, but I think that this book really hits the next gear and really thrives once we get about halfway into the book and it transitions over to Jim Starlin. He really makes this character his own, and we strip him out of Counter-Earth and set him loose in the cosmos, and he becomes this kind of cosmic being who's trying to find who he is and really what his purpose is, especially being out of Counter-Earth and out of that mission. Kind of what is he now? What does he stand for? What is he going to do? We also have the evolution of this soul gem that's embedded in his forehead that begins to start kind of stealing souls and things like that. We know, if you're a fan of the Marvel Universe, that this gem in his forehead is actually one of the Infinity Gems or Infinity Stones if you're a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And so there's some really interesting concepts with all that. We have a lot of characters show up in this book for the first time, like Pip the Troll, Gamora. It's all really very cool. Warlock has some fights with Thanos, so if you're a fan of him, there's some really cool interactions throughout this book as well. Really, again, once we hit Starlin, this book is firing on all cylinders, and I had a blast. I think once I hit that point in this book, I literally couldn't put it down. I mean, I read it in like 1 or 2 sittings at that point, and I really enjoyed it. Like I said, reading some of Starlin's like 80s Silver Surfer stuff and then comparing it to this, I think that's definitely similar skeleton and foundation in a lot of ways. There's some good like philosophical ideas. We're fully in kind of the cosmic Marvel realm, and we're starting to get the beginnings of kind of the Infinity Gems and more of Thanos' plans. So if you're a fan of the later Infinity Gauntlet storyline and everything that comes after that, there are a lot of kind of beginning musings about some of these ideas that Starlin will use later. And I think for a fan, like, I really loved reading some of these issues. I think it provided so much more context for that whole saga and all of these characters. I think Warlock became a lot more interesting under Starlin as well. because he started to doubt himself more. We saw a lot more internal conflicts and strife and battles within himself, and I think that it made it more of a rich experience reading that. I also think the secondary characters and cast of characters we got under Starlin were also a lot more interesting and nuanced. Overall, though, it was a really fun book. I do think because it changed hands creatively a lot, it can come across a bit uneven as far as the quality, but I appreciate Marvel collecting all of these early appearances and in chronological order. It's a ton of fun. In addition to those Silver Age issues and the Warlock kind of run itself and the Marvel Premiere stuff, we also have a couple cool like annuals and features and things like Incredible Hulk and Avengers, and that's also really great. I think the last couple issues in this book have some like Marvel superhero team up kind of stuff, which was all handled very well. I do think narratively there is kind of a straight line through this book in many ways, which is impressive with all the creative teams shuffling and all the years in which these issues were presented. Very cool stuff. And as you can see, we had a ton of extras at the end of that, a bunch of sketches. They have images from a lost issue, promotional images, covers for other collections, things like that. Really rich extras at the back. Overall, a very satisfying collection. I think if you're a fan of Bronze Age comics or the Marvel cosmic kind of universe, definitely worth reading, especially that Jim Starlin portion. Really happy to see Marvel creating books like this still. If you're interested in more reviews from me, you can check out my channel, The Comic Book Report. And for all of your comic collected edition needs, of course, always check out Organic Price Books. Thank you for watching.